You know, in the days before the internet, if you wanted to get your voice out, you really write a letter to the editor. There's not much way to do it otherwise. There really wasn't even talk radio until I think it was around the 1980. In the 80s, talk radio got pretty popular, and then more people could, you know, call in and get their voices heard, various topics. And you know, I mean, what else could you do? Post a billboard somewhere? But people would write letters to the editor. For you young folks, you had the editorial page, the op-ed page, you know, and a section on about every, they still do, I guess, every newspaper. I don't know if anybody does that anymore. But you would have maybe 6 or 8, you know, letters to the editor that someone, you know, various citizens had written. And of course, the newspaper does all the editing. They're the gatekeepers. So whatever gets published in the paper, printed, you know, it's up to them. And newspapers typically, historically, have not been favorable to firearms people in general, you know. But they will publish them, they will print them, because they want to get an argument or a controversy going, you know. They get people reading and mad or whatever, so they would publish them for that reason, if no other. Sometimes they might even publish a bad one, you know, to make gun owners look bad. I don't know. It's probably why they published mine, because I had several, you know, in there over the years in the Nashville, Tennessean. And I don't know if I want to read, but I just wanted just kind of a little history lesson. These old papers, you know, I mean, for you young people, this must seem really, really odd, I guess, that you would actually, you know, and I got names and everything in here, but, you know, just old papers that, and I tried to, when it would come out, I'd cut it out and stick it in a folder somewhere, but, you know, and you had to put your name and address on it. You had to have your address on it. And I think you had to give them your phone number. Yeah, you did. You have to give them your phone number. They didn't publish your phone number. They published your address. And, yeah, no, they didn't publish your phone number. And, you know, there they were. And most of mine, of course, were on firearms issues. Like, I don't read all these, but like, protect everybody from themselves. That was the title of that one. Gun control works for those with guns. That was another one. Let's see. Risk of gun death is the price of freedom. Those are some of my. Let's see. Out in the real world, guns are normal. Fun. That was one of mine. Government. Is government our keeper? Sometimes they would choose the title. Guns used to prevent crime, bodily harm. Another one of mine. That was since I lived out here. 34 years I've been out here. Here's one I wrote on snowplows. I'd write them on other topics occasionally. How people would complain about how we don't have snowplows in Nashville, move down from New York or Michigan, and get upset with how backwards we were. And I wrote a letter. Hey, I got 3 stars for that one. But it was, you know, again, when you have like 1 snow a year, what you can do, have a fleet of, you know, $10 million worth of snowplows. Hey, just call off school. Miss a day of work, not that big a deal. You know, it's kind of the way we operate in the South, right? It's not that we're that panicky, although people do panic, but it doesn't make sense to have all that huge investment when it just doesn't snow that much here in the Nashville area. In fact, we even had snow this year. Well, maybe when John and I were on the road, there was a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, so. And I ran across one that I thought I might read. I think I mentioned it before. I wasn't sure I'd read it or not. It's a little R-rated, believe it or not. And it's not even about guns. Just it goes back to the 70s. It's one I wrote in the 70s, mid-70s. But just to kind of give you an idea of my, you know, I talk about leaning libertarian. I really do, and I guess I always have. The city officials back in the 70s were always, Nashville was a different kind of city, really. There were well, there's always a lot of strip shows and things, you know, in any large city, I guess, but there were even massage parlors and things, but the government was preoccupied with that as an incredibly serious issue when there were so many other things to be concerned about. And I just got a wild hair and wrote this letter one time, and let me see if you get it, okay? Hopefully I don't offend anybody. Wouldn't want to do that, right? I would like to commend our city officials for finally doing something about the strip shows in downtown Nashville. These eyesores have contributed to the immorality of Nashvillians long enough. Who knows how many basically good Christian men have been reduced to a disgusting state of depravity as a result of viewing these sinful shows, not to mention the ruined lives of the young ladies who are forced into this licentious profession. However, the real issue, I believe, is being overlooked. Mandatory attendance at these strip shows is the issue which our officials should be addressing themselves, not the extent to which the strippers are undressing themselves. Surely nobody would object to these shows were it possible to choose between attending or staying home. It is the fact that we are forced to drive downtown and witness these vulgar performances that I find ludicrous. My solution is to forget what the girls are wearing or not wearing, let them strip to the buff if they choose, but just don't force me to go in and watch. I simply want to be able to exercise my right to choose, that's all. So, that sounds like typical me. One reason I wanted to talk about that one, well, first of all, again, there's my libertarian bent, live and let live, leave people alone for not hurting you. But the funny thing about it was, and I know that 98% of you listening got that, right? What's it called? The same thing people criticize me for being too sarcastic. In fact, today, somebody told me that my sarcasm was really getting old and they were going to quit watching or something like that. I said, well, I'm sorry, you better leave them because I won't be changing, right? The funny thing was, now this is pre-internet. This is a long time pre-internet in the 70s. But you had to give your name, and it was at the end of the letter, your name and your address. And I guess people could get your phone number even back then. Yeah, look you up in the phone book, duh, okay? And I got calls on my answering machine. And I think I didn't even have an answering machine at first, but I got one. Maybe that's why I finally got one. But I had calls, people upset with me, and several of them were females. I think they were probably dancers downtown, giving me a hard time. And I got letters from them too. I got a bunch of letters. I didn't save those, I guess, but I got letters, notes from people, multiple. And most of them there were some, say, yeah, great, I agree with you, that kind of thing. But there were a lot of them that just gave me a hard time for. And one of those gals that called, what's wrong with you? What are you upset with us for? I mean, they just did not get the sarcasm. They thought I was trying to close them down. So it's kind of funny, I mean, people are the same, whether it's 2020, whatever year is 2020, or 1975 or whatever. There are a lot of gullible people. And you've got to be careful or folks won't get your point, right? So anyway, but maybe I'll read another gun-related one here. Let's see. I don't have 49 things I'm going to talk about, so I'll bore you with this. I don't know. Some of them are, they're not necessarily great literature, but just something that struck me at the time. Gun control works for those with guns. I don't know what year this was, 70s or 80s. One could convincingly argue that the purpose of an automobile is strictly transportation and that wine is made primarily for intoxication. However, I think Darrell Waltrip would take issue with the former and any sensible wine drinker with the latter. As well, I must take issue with one of the Tennessean's May 24th editorials, which stated that the Uzi has one purpose: to kill as many human beings as quickly as possible. That's what they said in their editorial. That's interesting because there must be thousands of Uzis owned and fired regularly by law-abiding citizens, and I don't recall any Uzi killings lately by these people. Attend a gun show some month at the fairgrounds, and you might be surprised to see the people from all walks of life buy these guns strictly for shooting pleasure. I had one at the time. Just as it must be a real kick to soup up a car and play with it by racing around a track at incredible speeds, firearms of all types are great fun to shoot on firing ranges. Certainly, nobody would want to hunt a deer with an Uzi. It would be too ineffective. Your average bolt-action or semi-automatic deer rifle is much more powerful and deadly. Every time the media trot out the "who needs assault rifles to hunt deer" argument, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison must toss and turn in their graves. The Constitution is not about hunting, it's about the people having ultimate control. If you check the records, I believe you'll find that assault rifles killed more people in China last year than they killed in the United States. This might have been around the Tiananmen Square issue. Gun control works really well in China, at least for those who have the guns. Okay, so anyway, there's a gun letter. But yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be patting myself on the back, but I used to try to get my voice out there back when it was a little more difficult. So those were typed out on a typewriter, manual typewriter, printed, well, typed out, put in an envelope, put a stamp on it, mailed through the post office to the newspaper. And then you would kind of watch a few days later, see if they printed it or published it, whatever you want to call it. So that's the old school, okay? So again, I dug up some of my old school stuff and brought back a lot of memories, gosh, and everything you can imagine. And that's the cool thing about having lived a while. I have a lot of life, a lot of experiences, and I can even remember some of them.